Paul McGuire Grimes, ABC, Minneapolis. Chaz, it is an absolute honor getting to talk to you today. I'm loving your book. It's one of those books I think you just want to have like a highlighter and a pen ready, take notes, talk about your life. And you have sections for journaling, which I think is so important too. So thank you for the
Yes.
time today.
Thank you, Paul. I'm really happy to be here with you, and I'm glad that you think it's time to give a FECK because it is. And I just want people to know that FECK is an acronym
Yes.
for forgiveness, empathy, compassion, and kindness. I think that these are four principles that we can use to help elevate humanity and actually really help bring people together.
And I,
Because at the end, I think it's really all about love. That's what it's all
yes,
about.
yes. It's a hard time right now, I think, for so many people, and it's hard to remember that. And the
Yeah.
first section, forgiveness, really hit me like a ton of bricks. And I'm going to be
Oh,
honest, I have a hard time forgiving people. I hold grudges, and you write, forgiveness is not about letting someone off the hook, but you're actually letting yourself off the hook.
yes.
I just feel like it's for me the hardest to work on. I'm curious, do you feel that way as well? And do you find it hard to forgive others?
I have to tell you, forgiveness is one of the hardest things to do. Um, and I think it was when I spoke with Archbishop Desmond Tutu that I really started learning because I was asking him, how could you and Nelson Mandela, especially Nelson Mandela, had been imprisoned for like 27 years. And when he got out of prison, before he became the president of South Africa, he had to forgive the people who had him, jailed for 27 years, imprisoned. And he had to also, they wanted to move forward without any bloodshed. Archbishop Desmond Tutu told me, you forgive for you, not for the other person. And I was like, what? He said, no, as long as you are holding hatred or revenge or thoughts of you remain a victim and you remain imprisoned. When you forgive the other person, it takes that burden off your shoulders. It frees you. It opens up your heart space and your mind to let in love and light again. I thought, oh my goodness, I never thought of it like that. I thought of, I forgive because I'm a good person and I want to forgive this bad person who did this to me. But no, when he explained it like that, it made sense to me. And I started finding it easier to forgive people after that. Forgiveness is hard, but it
It's
frees us.
Yes, it does when you actually like apply it and feel the effects of that. And I love how
Yeah.
you talk about it, like you almost have to do that first before empathy, compassion, and kindness can kind of
Yeah.
fall into place. And you talked about how empathy was a cornerstone of your late husband, Roger, who I just want to say
Oh,
is an idol of mine. When I was a kid,
you.
I would fill notebooks and journals of where him and Gene's thumbs went every Saturday when I watched Siskel and Ebert. And I
Yeah.
still think that they're my guiding light in so many ways. I have so many of his books, and yours are going to go
Oh,
right along. Yours is going to go right next to his. And you say how,
thank you.
yeah, empathy was a kind of a cornerstone of who Roger was. What did he
Yeah.
teach you about empathy? And did that kind of take you off guard when you first met him?
So, okay, those are two separate questions. I have to answer them separately, and I will tell you why.
Yeah.
When I, of course, when I first met him, I knew who he was. I had seen he had been on television, but Gene was my favorite one of Siskel and Ebert when I used to watch them on television. And it wasn't until I met Roger in person and I really got how what a good person he was, how deep down he's really generous and kind and compassionate and empathetic. And it didn't always come across maybe when I saw he and Gene going back and forth. So I was surprised to learn that Roger is actually my favorite of Siskel and Ebert. But when I first met him, it wasn't that way. So that's why I answered those questions
Mhm.
separately. So what he taught me about empathy is he said that empathy allows you to put yourself in someone else's shoes for, if you're watching a movie, let's say for the 2 hours that you're watching the movie, you get to see someone who's different than you, different from you, someone who is maybe a different gender or a different age or a different socioeconomic circumstance or a different religion, which is a biggie, or someone who speaks a different language. And you get to see what it's like to be that person. What are their circumstances? Sometimes we don't sometimes we surround ourselves only with people who are like us. And so it's good to empathize with the other people who share this journey of earth with us.
Absolutely. I really
And
think one of my mottos
mhm,
about film is that movies have the chance to not only entertain us, of course, but also to
yes,
educate us. I'm curious, what
yes.
are the movies that you've either seen lately or that have just stood the test of time for you that have really opened your eyes to another culture, another lifestyle, another way of living?
Okay. So those are I'm going to tell you one movie that both Roger and I loved. And it made I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm just going to tell
No
you.
shame,
And
no
this is
shame.
one that has everything in it. It has the empathy, the compassion, the kindness, the forgiveness. Forrest Gump. I love that movie because little Forrest has to go through, and I think this movie stands the test of time because little Forrest he was bullied because he was different. He had a disability. He was bullied. He wanted friends. He had to learn to forgive the people. His mother had to learn also to forgive. There was compassion and there was kindness. And then when he met Jenny and he finds that there is someone he connects to and connects to him so deeply and who loves him and he loves her. And I mean, there's just so much in that movie that I love that's about goodness and kindness. So that's one that stands the test of time for me.
Absolutely. And when you have people like Tom Hanks and Sally Field and Robin Wright, I've had the
Yes.
chance to interview all three of them, and I just feel like they just bring so much life to all of their roles in that. I think it's so beautiful. I love Pixar's Inside Out, and you mentioned it in the book
Oh,
about how it just this display of empathy. And I'm curious, what do you love about that movie? And do you think that animation gets misjudged for the power of storytelling in that medium?
I absolutely do. You are right. That movie, I think more than anything that I've seen in the last, let's say, 10 or 12 years is, and there, you know what, Inside Out too. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
Not
Maybe
yet, but I
not
have
yet,
to.
but are you looking forward to it too?
Yes. Oh my
And I'm
God,
keeping my
yes.
fingers crossed that it's as good as Inside Out 1.
Yeah.
That movie, I think, really opened people's eyes to the storytelling potential of animation. I think that movie, as well as any narrative feature, really teaches people about emotions and helps encourage things like empathy and kindness and compassion and forgiveness. And there are other, and I think since that movie, I think people have looked to see other animated tales that are really good storytelling. Uh,
Hmm.
Another movie that I wanted to mention because I also love those movies about family. King Richard, about Serena and Venus Williams' father and how he helped his daughters become who they were and how their mother helped. Just I like those movies as well because they're about people that we tend to underestimate. And then you see what opening the door and providing opportunity can help these, people blossom. There's another movie that I really love, and it's called Children of Heaven. And I think it's an Iranian movie, Majidi.
Hmm.
And it's about a little brother and sister, and they're very poor. And I think the sister loses her sock, which is a really big deal because they're really super poor, and and the kids have to work together. But that's another. I don't want to keep naming movies, but you asked me the ones that stand the test of time, and some of those come to mind for
Oh
me.
my, I love
Oh,
it. I
oh,
mean,
oh, oh, wait. What other movie that I absolutely love?
uh,
Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
oh, I mean, the documentary was great, but what Tom Hanks did, I literally felt like he was reaching through the screen to talk to
Yeah,
me specifically. And it was
yes.
before we had a child, and I just was like on the verge of like welling up. And talk about
Yeah,
another idol of mine is Mr.
yeah.
Hanks. He's just so incredible. You know,
But Mr. Rogers himself too.
yes,
Do you remember, Paul, do you remember when I think it was Esquire magazine had an article about why men have come to love Mr. Rogers?
no, but
Mr. Rogers became cool when Esquire magazine wrote about him because they said there is something that to show men that they don't have to be afraid to show that they care for people, that they love people, that they want to help people. So anyway,
he's an amazing, I think, example of FECK and all of that, and to distill it into such easy words for anyone of any age to understand and live out is truly beautiful. And I wish she was still here with us. You know, what was the
can I
last
ask
time?
you? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh no,
No,
you're fine. You go.
I want to ask you what is one of your movies that you think show one of the FECK principles, whether it's forgiveness or empathy, compassion, or
I,
kindness?
well, I was just thinking about Coda. You know, we are talking about the movies that help us
Oh,
like learn about other people. And
yes.
just learning, I think, what a daughter that is like has that is a child of deaf parents, and to
Yeah.
have everyone else in their family be deaf, and you having to try to find your own voice and be your
Oh,
own person while
I love
being
that movie.
responsible for, like
Yeah,
I needed it to win Best Picture, and it did.
yeah.
I think
You,
about Killers of the Flower Moon really opening people's eyes up to the reign of terror, and Marty is so
yeah.
good at doing that. I thought about Moonlight, just again, like people don't know, I think, that story, or like as a gay man myself, I was like, we need more examples of this. It was
Yeah.
very
Moonlight,
gigantic fun.
beautiful, beautiful. Killers of the Flower Moon, beautiful. Just
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, we could keep talking all day about films, I swear. When was the last time someone did something kind for you?
I'd have to say now, this is going to sound, this is going to sound like Mr. Rogers.
Do it.
Someone does something kind for me every single day. And I don't know if it's because I look for it. I actually have reoriented my life to look for the good rather than the bad, to expect the good from other people. Because do you know, I think that when we expect it, that they show up. I have to, I'm sorry, I have to move my camera. I
Right.
think I had it down right on my head too much or
Right.
something. But anyway, I I find, and maybe because I set out to do something good for someone else every single day.
Mm,
One thing, even if it's maybe speak to someone that I haven't spoken to before, say smile or really do something more substantial as well. And I find that goodness comes back, tends to come back to us.
hmm
So I, I'm almost apologizing for saying that. And something's wrong with me that I have to
Oh,
apologize for that. But when I wrote this book, that was one of the reasons that I wrote it, to say that when you, I just, when you actually approach people in a way where you're expecting them to be their best, people want to show up that way.
yeah.
And I think people want to be their best selves. And I think we're not given enough opportunity to show up like that. And especially during the pandemic, when we were all isolated, we were scared. We didn't know how long it was going to last. We didn't know were we going to get some virus that was going to kill us. We did hear of people who died. Lots, in the United States, I think over 1 million people died, and others, more around the world. And so we were afraid we almost became afraid of people. We couldn't shake hands, we couldn't kiss, we couldn't hug. And so when we came out of that pandemic, we came out with a higher level of anxiety than I have known in our lifetimes, except for 9/11.
Mhm.
Also a lot of anxiety, but this was even more so in a way because it was personal,
Yeah.
because you couldn't hug or kiss, or people would have funerals and you couldn't have people there because of the rules. So I think that the FECK book became even more important to me because I wanted people to find that way to connect with other people again.
And to, I think, challenge themselves to maybe reach beyond their comfort zone and
Yeah.
learn someone else's story, or to forgive, or whatever that. I remember, we're going to go over time. I
Oh,
apologize,
I'm
but
sorry.
the story you talked about with your friend who had a different opinion about Colin Kaepernick, and you, like, didn't, you weren't sure how to brace the topic. You were almost like, maybe
Yes.
I don't want to see them, and then you did see each other, and it was this, if it didn't, you still had the same opinion, but you were able to kind of come together and still have that friendship.
Okay, I love that story because we saw each other twice. The first time, and she and I had been friends. We were this women's group, and for like 4 years, whenever this women's group would get together, she and I were always the ones who were laughing. And it's funny that we never talked about politics or any of that stuff. We just had good time with each other. She was so compassionate. We both talked about how do you solve problems? How do you serve on committees where you're trying to make sure that no kids are hungry. World hunger. How can you serve on committees where you make sure that children have, um, access to education? How can we, do something to maybe donate books we were always talking about philanthropic things.
Right.
And then the Colin Kaepernick event came up and she said that his taking a knee, she thought that he should have been kicked off the team. And I said, no, that was his way. That was his platform of saying, this is who I can do something. This is the way that I can do something. She didn't see it that way. She said, no, he's disrespecting the flag. I said, he's not disrespecting the flag. He's not disrespecting that. None of that. Anyway, so I don't know if she wanted to see me. I didn't want to see her. But when we didn't see each other for a while, but when we saw each other, all the things that we had shared, we just hugged and smiled. And then because of the pandemic, we didn't see each other for a while again. And just last September, I think it was, we went on a trip together to Europe with this women's group. And I was going to see her every day for almost 2 weeks. And I was dreading it. I didn't know what she thought. She didn't know what I thought. And so when the trip came, the first time that we got together on the trip, I decided, don't mention it. Don't mention that I'm writing this book and that she's in it and I'm talking about this Colin Kaepernick thing. I waited until the very end of the trip and I told her. And she said, I have forgotten all about it. So that's another thing about when we talk about forgiveness. A lot of times when you're carrying a weight on your shoulder, the other person may not even be thinking about it. So anyway, so I told her, and I said, "Do you still feel the same way about Colin Kaepernick?" She said, "I do." She said, "Certainly you've come around." I said, "No, I still feel the same way. I feel that he was being patriotic doing what he was doing." And we looked at each other and I thought, are we going to be mad? Are we going to try to convince? No, we burst out laughing again and we hugged each other. And she said, you know what? I love you even more for knowing that we can talk about it. We can disagree, but we can still express our humanity and our love for each other. She
Mhm.
said, that's what we need to go teach that to Congress. So
Oh, easier said than done these days.
yeah, I know. Yes. So
Oh my
it's
God, Chaz. I feel like that's a great way to bookend this. One final question. How often do people come up to you and say, what would Roger think of this movie?
a lot. They do a lot. And how often do I think, what would Roger think of this movie? Every Friday. when RogerEbert.com puts out our new list of movie reviews, there are some movies in particular that I say, oh, I wish Roger had seen this. What would he have thought of it? I'm so glad that you are doing what you do so that we can have your voice.
Thank
And I hope that to meet you in person one day.
Absolutely. I would love that. I have Life Itself right here. And like,
Oh,
I mean, here's just a small stack of the books that I have of his. I'm
oh
telling
my
you,
goodness.
when he is, I look up to him whenever I feel a funk or miss, just not, whenever I'm askew, I just go back to what he
Yes.
and Gene would talk about and see
Mhm.
their opinion. And they were both right. Like
Yeah.
they're both right in their own opinion.
When I wrote It's Time to Give Effect, I actually, like I said, it started with the empathy from Roger,
Hmm.
and he would be so happy that I added the forgiveness and the compassion and the kindness. Um, and he told me, he said, you're going to write about this one day. And at that time, I had no plans to write the book. And I said, no, I'm not. He said, yes, you will. He
Right.
said, because you live it. So
Hmm. I love that. Chaz,
thank
thank you for the
you.
time today. I
Thank you
so
so
appreciate
much.
it. I hope people love it as much as I did. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chaz. Have a good day. Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.